What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined always by my man in the corner, producer Nick Belsky. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talker. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast, the Pittsburgh Steelers. It is a victory Monday here in the Burgh, and an 18-16 victory on paper says one thing. You watch the game, it says a completely different thing. And I am sorry, my friend, but if you are sitting around on a Sunday and your options are a 40-0 blowout or a 18-16 Pittsburgh Steelers Baltimore Ravens beatdown, where two elite defenses show once again why this rivalry is possibly the best rivalry in professional sport, you will choose this one every single time. Russell Wilson doesn't have the greatest game of his career, but let me tell you, there is no cause for concern right now. We're talking, is it time for Mike Williams? The Pittsburgh Steelers defense answers a question that we needed desperately answered because concerns, well, they were getting pretty big. And as we do every single day, we will answer all of your questions. Nick, I'll say three things here. First, congratulations. You said TJ Watt was going to have a game. He had a game. Two, I don't know how we got this lucky. I know everybody talked offense. I know everybody said this is going to be hammer the over. This is Lamar Jackson versus Russell Wilson. This is Derrick Henry versus Najee Harris. No, what it was the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Baltimore Ravens, reminding all of us exactly what we missed all season long, that when these two teams meet, does not matter what the record is, it's going to be a beatdown, and it's going to be a defensive battle, because that is what this rivalry is. That is why this rivalry is so great, but it does not come without new guys getting introduced. Players like Joey Porter Jr. embedding themselves even deeper into a rivalry. And of course, in the best way possible, ending with Lamar Jackson running for his life, being chased down while Joey Porter Jr. cheers and yells in the stands with an incomplete pass that seals a victory for the black and gold. It is one hell of a victory Monday here in the city of Pittsburgh. They turn their attention to the Cleveland Browns, and I don't care what anybody says. The Cleveland Browns might be the Cleveland Browns, and their window might be closed, and they might have wasted their best years with Deshaun Watson, and Jameis Winston is not the answer, but it's still the Cleveland Browns. And the Pittsburgh Steelers, like Russell Wilson said, will celebrate for 2 hours before turning their attention to winning 5 in a row and hopefully increasing that lead in the AFC North. It's a beautiful day here in the city of Pittsburgh. I would imagine it's not as beautiful down in the DMV, but that's okay. There's something about a victory Monday. How are you feeling, my friend?
I mean, I don't know about everybody else that lives in my area, but I'm feeling great. I mean, Steelers are 8-2. Ravens get the loss, so I know a lot of the people around me are in the dumps, but you know, it's sunny out, so they can go touch grass or something like that. But it's also nice because I'm in the presence of Pittsburgh royalty, of a Pittsburgh celebrity. I don't know if everybody caught the walkover yesterday, but Noah got recognized by, of course, one of our many phenomenal listeners and viewers who
shout out,
are loyal to a fault, and they called you out during the walkover, and that was probably the highlight of my day. I loved it. So shout out to that listener, shout out to that viewer, and shout out to you, Noah, because that's just validation for all the work you've been putting in. So pleased to be joined by you on Victory Monday.
I appreciate that. I appreciate Big Money Bets. That's who caught me down yesterday. Excited to go to Serafino's, which is the Italian restaurant. That was the conversation. We got off the camera, started talking good Italian places in Pittsburgh, which I will, you know me, everybody who knows me knows that is a conversation I will always be grateful for. So shout out, excited to go try it. And yeah, it was a good day yesterday. Start to finish, it just felt like a fantastic Sunday afternoon in the city of Pittsburgh. An 18-16 victory over the Baltimore Ravens, a game where everybody said this was going to be offense. Hammer the over. I created, when you have $5-6 left in the DraftKings account and you said, well, It's now or never, pal. We're going big or we're going home. And your parlay starts adding up and up and up and up and up. Well, I added it up and it was all offense. All offense. And it was easy to say that parlay did not even come close to hitting. And that was the game it was. Defense on defense. Two questionable defenses. Two defenses that people had concerns about going into week 11, walk away, I would say, the game of the week in a defensive battle, which is exactly what you're looking for. And that includes a week where the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs ended, what are they, 9-0? A 9-0 run for Kansas City. This was the game of the week. Your reaction to this one? I mean, there were a few moments where you thought the Steelers were going to lose. Even when Baltimore drove down the field and scored there at the end, you looked at it and there was just something in your heart that at the beginning of that drive, you knew that was going to happen, that this game was not going to end without that happening. And then it would come down to a 2-point conversion. They try the first time. Pittsburgh calls a timeout, which at the time you saw TJ get through the gap and you say, what are you doing, Mike? Why would you do that? And I don't know if he gets through the gap, if everybody's going 100%, but Lamar Jackson going to the outside without Derrick Henry on the field, a wild decision there by Baltimore, but one that works out in the Pittsburgh Steelers' favor. Joey Porter Jr. had a game-sealing INT last year in this rivalry. This year, he has a game-sealing tackle on a 2-point conversion. That is what makes this rivalry so special. I mean, overall, your thoughts on an electric game at Acrisure Stadium?
Yeah, we would have liked to see Russell Wilson dice up the Baltimore Ravens' 32nd ranked pass defense in the NFL. Yeah. We didn't get to see that. We would have liked to see Najee Harris run wild all over the Baltimore Ravens. We didn't get to see that. We would have liked to see the Pittsburgh Steelers not give up the touchdown to begin with against the Baltimore Ravens on that last drive, but we didn't see that. What we did see, and I think this is perhaps more important than seeing all of those things against Baltimore on Sunday. What we did see is that 2-week stretch, the Steelers can win either way. They won offensively against Washington, 28-27, where the defense didn't have the best day, but the offense picked them up. And they won a knockdown, drag out, punch you in the mouth matchup against the Baltimore Ravens, where the defense had to step up each and every series, and the offense had to do just enough, right? I mean, look no further than how they won outside of that. In Washington, they lost the turnover battle, but they scored all touchdowns, so it made up for it. In Baltimore, or against Baltimore, they won the turnover battle and they kicked all field goals. So showing that you can win both ways, showing that you can win no matter what the game script is, that's what championship teams do. And I think that goes a long way into making the Steelers a much more credible contender at this stage of the season. So I like the fact that they had to win in a way that they hadn't had to win in a lot of these games since Russell Wilson has taken over.
I agree. We came into this, I said this on the walkover yesterday, and I had it planned out way better in my head than it came out on camera, but that's always how that happens. The Steelers approached the first half and did everything that we expected them to do. They lost games they should have won. They won games they should have lost. They just put themselves in position to say, all right, going to the back half, everybody's talking about us. We are the talk of the NFL right now. Are we real? But it comes with the question every single time. Every single time any single person talked about the Pittsburgh Steelers, it added or it ended with, but that back half is a gauntlet and you got to get through it. And are they going to get through it? Well, we're 2 games in. Both of these games, exactly what you just said, challenged the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2 separate ways, and they won both times doing different things and relying on different people and turning to both sides of the football. And the week before that, turning to, or 2 weeks before that, because they had the bye week, turning to special teams, which means that the Pittsburgh Steelers look like a complete football team. They are 2-0 in this back half disaster of a schedule. And that's all you could ask for. Nobody even asked for this. If people said, you win every other one in this back half, okay, you're feeling good. Well, they're 2-0 right now. Things look pretty great. And just like you said, when you get to rely on the defense, because that was the question. That was the last question everybody had. We're going to dive into Mike Williams soon, but Mike Williams is more of a when, not a why, not a what. It's a when. The defense was a why. The defense was a how concerned are you about the struggles that they've had in the last couple of games. And I get it. It's Lamar Jackson, but it was also Derrick Henry. It was also Zay Flowers, who did literally nothing. And I mean, Derrick Henry only had 65 yards. That's not a game for Derrick Henry. Nick Herbig comes up with a huge fumble earlier in that game. TJ Watt comes up with 2 sacks. The defense, Joey Porter Jr., massive game overall. Shut Zay Flowers down the whole time and then made a ginormous tackle at the end of it. That's what you wanted to see. That was the question that you needed answered was, can the defense do this against the best offense in football? Yeah, they could. They did. And Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs is a totally different animal. Travis Kelce in the playoffs is a totally different animal. I understand all this. But to be able to say, well, the defense did it, that shows you that adds a lot more confidence to the Pittsburgh Steelers than they had going into this one, even on a 3-game winning streak. Now, a 5-game winning streak.
5.
We're at 5. Excuse me. 4 for Russ. Now we're going to 6. Wow. That's even more impressive for the Pittsburgh Steelers. There are things that come with this, though. Russell Wilson had a struggle bus of a game, start to finish. What is going on with the Pittsburgh Steelers' decision to keep Mike Williams off the field when there is literally no open receivers outside of George Pickens? And half the time, George isn't even open. Russell Wilson's just saying, well, I got nowhere else to go. I'm going to George Pickens. I mean, we'll start with Russ. He finishes yesterday completing 23 of 36, 205 yards, an interception. He has a 67.5 passer rating, which does beat Lamar Jackson's 66.1. And then he sacked 4 times. Seems like he's holding on to the ball forever. What's your concern level for Russ after week 11?
I think it's a matter of once is what it is. If you see it again against Cleveland, and then you start to get worried. But against Baltimore, the offensive front wasn't winning. The wide receivers weren't winning. But at the end of the day, I think Russell Wilson, he struggled early. He got sacked 4 times in the first half. He didn't have a lot of time. He didn't have a lot of space to make plays, and he was running for his life a little bit there. And that's something we haven't seen out of Russell Wilson yet behind this Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line. Yeah, we saw it a little bit against the Washington Commanders, but not to the level that we saw it against the Baltimore Ravens. And I see a lot of people getting upset because, I mean, the Ravens came in with a bad secondary, but their secondary didn't play bad, and their defensive front dominated. And that is what's going to help out that back end whenever you limit the Pittsburgh Steelers to, hey, you have to start taking the checkdowns. Whereas Russ wanted the big plays. And that's what this offense has been predicated on since Rush stepped in is, hey, we're going to make the big plays. You can't do that if you throw the ball at the end of a 2-step drop, right? You're trying to hold on to the ball to create time and space to be able to get it down to George Pickens, which we saw a couple of times, to get it down to Mike Williams, which we didn't get to see because, well, it didn't open up. So I'm not as concerned about Russell Wilson, especially because you look at that second half, they started to move the ball. They moved the ball on every single drive of the second half. He went field goal, interception, field goal, end of game. So every single drive, you were beating the Baltimore Ravens defense. You just weren't able to finish. And that's a conversation we've had a couple times this season. But overall, in the 4 games, Russell Wilson has shown that he can finish. He just wasn't able to on Sunday against Baltimore.
I agree. I agree. My worries about Russ are small, simply because in a game where you won on Chris Boswell and the Ravens lost on Justin Tucker, it's a game that just clearly wasn't going to be decided by offense. It just wasn't. This was going to be a defensive battle. This was going to be a special team showdown. That's what this is. And it was a great game because of it. If Russ does it again in Cleveland, obviously concerns, but I think there are fixes to this as well, because just like you said, he's looking for the shots. He's looking for the deep ball. He's looking for somebody to get open. The Steelers offense is designed for that. I don't think they should have been yesterday. You adjust properly and you throw much shorter passes. You use Calvin Austin in the slot and running short routes instead of these deep balls that make no sense to me. And you probably utilize Pat Freiermuth a little bit more. I mean, this is a different game. But Mike Williams comes in there and maybe there's some separation, because that's what the Steelers are missing, is they have nobody else. And yesterday was an example that when you go up against a good defense, you need somebody else. You need somebody else desperately. The Steelers haven't played a defense as good as Baltimore's when Baltimore's is good. And I get it. Their secondary, disgusting. But I just look at yesterday as a battle of two good defenses that took place, that both defenses stepped up bigger than they've stepped up all season. And you had no answer. You had nobody to go in there and rely on after George Pickens to say, okay, is somebody else open? No, they weren't. Nobody else was open. You saw Russ running around all the time. I think that's fixable, and it's time for it. It's time for Mike Williams. The Steelers can't ignore this any longer. I get it. They got a short week, but he's been here a week. He's going to get another practice tomorrow. He's going to get a walkthrough on Wednesday. At this point, he has to have learned most of the offense. You know, you're not a 30-year-old veteran playing a career that is full of starts and not understanding an offense that is probably more detailed and harder to learn than the Steelers' offenses of the past, but still an offensive coordinator that should be able to teach you how to get there much quicker than these past offensive coordinators. I get it. The jumping on a moving train. The train's going. The Pittsburgh Steelers are going to find themselves either getting Russ killed, because yesterday, every time he went and sat on the bench, there was somebody coming over and working on his calf, or, which is concerning, or you're going to find yourself where the offense just can't do anything in a game where the offense needs to do something. So it's time for Mike Williams. The Pittsburgh Steelers can't ignore it anymore. I don't know if that means I expect them to ignore it any longer. If you told me that on Thursday, Mike Williams plays 15 snaps, then, and what would I be surprised? No, probably not. But that doesn't mean that that's the correct decision. It's time for the Pittsburgh Steelers to turn to Mike Williams. How much, in your eyes, how much does the ceiling of this offense grow or the options expand just because of that one person?
I think it grows, but the first things first, you have to protect the quarterback.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
If you put Mike Williams out there, I think it helps because you get some separation. You have another option to throw down the field. But let's not act like Russ didn't get those opportunities with other receivers. Calvin Austin on the first drive, that ball hit him in the chest. You got to catch.
But Calvin Austin shouldn't be running those routes. That's not a Calvin Austin. That's not, like, when you got a 6'1" cornerback standing in front of your face, you're not even seeing that ball until it does hit you in the chest. If that's Mike Williams, he's got 3 inches on him. Yeah.
So that's why, I mean, it helps a little bit, but in that game yesterday, I don't think it makes a difference. Like, Mike Williams played 25 snaps yesterday, which is over double what he played against the Washington Commanders. So he's getting into the offense. Did he get a target? No, he didn't get a target, but I think part of that is you have to protect the quarterback. So if they handle that, then yes, I do think adding Mike Williams to this offense in a larger capacity will help the Pittsburgh Steelers. But first things first, Broderick Jones and that offensive line needs to figure some things out. They did in the second half. Remember, 4 sacks in the first half, 0 in the second half. They figured it out a little bit, and that's why they were able to move the ball. But if they're able to take care of that, undoubtedly, adding Mike Williams in a more regular basis helps this offense because it opens things up more for George Pickens. It should open things up more for Pat Freiermuth. And overall, it should just leave more one-on-one battles, which is what the Steelers are going to make their bread on in the pass game.
I agree. I think Russ held on to the ball a couple of times yesterday where you went, okay, dude, like, you're getting 5-6 seconds back there. Throw the damn football, even if nobody's open. But I also agree, like, Broderick Jones is a massive problem right now, and they can't go anywhere to him. But I had the conversation with myself yesterday about, it's been a while since we've talked about Broderick Jones and whether or not Dan Moore Jr. would come back next season. And I walked into that stadium yesterday, and by the time I left, I said, oh, okay, yeah, no, that's because Dan Moore is still probably coming back next season. And if he doesn't, that's an issue. But I agree with you. You got to get the offensive line cleared up. But I would say it's half. If I had to judge, and I'd have to go back and really, like, sit down and watch this tape, which I have not had time to do yet. But if I had to judge, I would say, just eyeball test, half of those were the offensive line, including Zach Frazier, getting blown up at the line of scrimmage. And then the other half was, Russ is back there almost running for his life and you're going, nobody's open. There's not a single person open. And I just don't think Van Jefferson is not a guy who creates any space. So he had one target yesterday, completely irrelevant wide receiver. Calvin Austin had opportunities, but Calvin Austin's getting used in the wrong ways. Like, it's just stop throwing it deep to Calvin Austin. He had one great deep ball against the Atlanta Falcons, or I think it was the Falcons' third string offense in the preseason a year ago. And then all of a sudden the Pittsburgh Steelers are like, this is an outside guy. He's not. He's 5'6". Okay. Put him in the middle. I think if Mike Williams comes in here, it adds. It doesn't change everything, but I do think it adds to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think it eliminates maybe a quarter of those instances where, Russell Wilson just doesn't have any options, and the only option is to take a sack or throw it away, which he did a number of times yesterday. And I think Mike Williams has much more to offer to this offense than we even know right now, because we're judging off of a guy who missed a year or a season a year ago and then went to the New York Jets, who are a dumpster fire. And we're trying to figure out what does this team have left, or what does this guy have left?
Yeah. And honestly, at the end of the day, we can talk about yesterday all we want as far as the minutia of it, but it was Ravens Steelers.
Yes.
You're not going to see it. You're not going to see that from the Steelers offense again, because they're not going to face an opponent like the Ravens again. I mean, sure, the Chiefs defense is really good, but there's hatred there that gets people out of character. And there's rivalry and history there that gets people out of character. That's why you see games like yesterday. Everybody and their mother is saying, well, it's going to be an offensive slugfest. It's going to be a shootout. It's going to be this. It's going to be that. It was everything that we've seen in the 2000s. It wasn't what everybody expected. Why? Because it's Ravens Steelers. People get out of their comfort zone. People get out of character in those matchups, and we saw it again on Sunday.
I agree. And that's why you can't judge almost anything outside of, Steelers defense played really well, because they did. They played really well. It was a hell of a game for the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens defense, we'll say. I wouldn't say the offense. I don't think Lamar Jackson and any of that. I'll ask you, and we are on the whole other side of this, so we're probably biased. Is Justin Tucker washed?
I mean,
he might be washed.
He might be
washed.
He's having a bad year. Is it
the Taylor Swift effect, or the Travis Kelce effect? I didn't want to say it out loud, but
I tweeted it yesterday. So he's gone downhill ever since he decided that he wanted to warm up 2 inches away from Patrick Mahomes' right knee. So it has gone downhill since then. But I think that we need to wait at least another season, because it could be a down season. If he's bad again next year, I think that's when you call it quits, because we've seen Chris Boswell have down seasons, and right now you can't even remember it because of how good he's been kicking. So I'm not going to say he's washed. I'm going to say he's not the guy to rely on this year. If you're the Baltimore
I agree.
Ravens.
What are you putting the odds? Is Chris Boswell the odds-on favorite right now to win Pittsburgh Steelers team MVP by the players?
I mean, 2 wins go directly to him. You can say the defense, but
I know.
Directly 2 18-point performances from Chris Boswell this year.
Yeah.
It's hard to go anywhere else.
Could you imagine if you drafted that guy? Could you imagine if you drafted that guy in fantasy football? Shout out to those who did. Shout out. All right. That's all on my agenda. We're talking your questions next, but first, we're going to take a quick break and hear from our boys over at The Perfect Gene. 400,000. That's how many men have rescued their nuts from stiff, unforgiving jeans, all thanks to The Perfect Gene. These jeans have enough stretch to accommodate Thanksgiving dinner and are comfy enough to wear all day watching Sunday football. Plus, even though they feel like sweatpants, they look good enough to be your go-to pants for date night. The Perfect Gene has the perfect size for everybody, and we mean everybody. They've got 6 different fits, waists running from 26 to 50 and lengths from 26 to 38, which means there are over 5,000 possible combinations of pants for you to choose from. So if you're a short king or actually 6'5", if you love a loose fit or are still in your skinny jean era, or if you're bulking up or cutting down, the Perfect Gene is the perfect option for you. For a limited time, our listeners get 15% off their first order plus free shipping at theperfectgene.nyc or Google The Perfect Gene and use our code ALLSTEELERS15 for 15% off. It's finally time to stop crushing your balls in uncomfortable jeans by going to theperfectgene.nyc. Our listeners get 15% off your first order, plus free shipping, free returns, and free exchanges when you use code ALLSTEELERS15 at checkout. That's 15% off for new customers at theperfectgene.nyc with promo code ALLSTEELERS15. After your purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Fuck your khakis and get the perfect gene. Shout out to everybody who just had to turn their volume down at their work desk. Shout out to the perfect gene. All right, we're diving into all of your questions. If you got them, make sure that you're tossing them in the chat. We'll get to all of them before we head out of here. Nick, I'll toss it to you. What do we got?
Yeah, let's start with Marlon Lewis. Appreciate you as always. Marlon says, how loud did the crowd cheer when Justin Fields came in for the first time?
Pretty loud. Pretty loud. I will say, I think it caught a lot of people off guard, but they were excited. It wasn't the first one. The first one, it was like, oh, Justin Fields is on the field. What is going on here? And then, because you were almost a little bit concerned. You were like, did Russ just get hurt? Did somebody miss something? I think everybody's attention just kind of couldn't grasp it fast enough. The second time on the 2nd and 7 or something, where he gets just close enough to a first down, which, you know, like Russ said, the slide rule there are question marks to the slide rule, especially if he's going to get hit the first time. Like if the first time you're going to count him as a running back and the second time you're going to say, well, now he's a quarterback. What do we do? Pick a side here, pal. It's got one or the other. It can't be both. But the second time people got pretty pumped. And then he went out and people were like, whoa, what are we doing? Put him back in the field. Like, this is what we need him for. This is why you have a Justin Fields. This is the moment. It was awesome to see the Justin Fields package yesterday. It was awesome to see it work. I was nervous that if you were only running the football, it was going to be concerning. But as soon as Roquan Smith went out, you said, look it, dude, nobody is going to be able to run as fast as Justin Fields to the outside. So if you just want to run that play, it's going to work every single time. He can get around any defensive lineman, and you don't have a linebacker fast enough to chase him down before he gets wherever he needs to get to, and probably should have got that first down on that one. But I'm glad that in a game where it took a whole team effort, Justin Fields got involved, because I think it was well-deserved.
Yeah, you could tell on the first one that it was kind of a slow rise as he was running out the field. The second one, everybody saw number 2 because they were dialed in. They were like, all right, now we know to look for it because they're using it in this game. The second time, everybody was like, oh, let's go. Like I was confused. I was like, really? You didn't pull this out at all. And in this moment, you're going to it. That says a lot about what Mike Tomlin thinks about Justin Fields overall. And we already knew that, but that's further confirmation about what Mike Tomlin believes of Justin Fields' abilities.
I agree.
Let's go over to John. Appreciate you as always. Says, need to start throwing more towards the middle of the field with our 2 tight ends that we have.
Yeah, I agree. And yesterday, the middle of the field was open. A lot of times the Steelers just didn't want to use it, which was questionable, but I agree. You got to get Pat more involved vertically in the middle of the field. You got to use, Darnell Washington yesterday, that's exactly what you're looking for from Darnell Washington, is just a big body in the middle of the field that is going to catch it and see what happens there. It's almost as if Darnell is too big, because every time he goes to hit somebody, you could tell it's like, dude, you're not going to get lower than this guy. Like you're never going to get lower than the 5'10" cornerback who is about to try to tackle you. And don't get me wrong, they're going to feel like they just got hit by a tractor trailer, and you're going to feel like you just tripped over a stick, but it's still, you're not going to get low enough. It's almost as if he has to jump he should just hurdle every single person at all times. But I agree. You have to start using Pat Freiermuth in the middle of the field. Have to. You should start using Calvin Austin in the middle of the field more. It's just open. And maybe that's just the Russell Wilson thing. Everybody used to say, oh, he's too short. He can't see over the line, and that's why they don't use him there. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's not true. I have no idea. There were moments yesterday where you saw, oh, he could do this. You have to do it more. Maybe that's the thing, though. Maybe it's just well, he could see Darnell Washington's head. So that's enough. He can't see anybody else's.
Let's go over to Big Al, who says Arthur Smith has to use Justin Fields more in the red zone.
Yeah, I agree. Yesterday was a bad day in the red zone. Washington even had some moments that were bad in the red zone. But I agree. I think that adds an element. That's what they were waiting for, though. They had to break it out first. They weren't ready to break it out. Now they're ready to break it out. I agree. You have to use Justin Fields in the red zone. It just adds a different running element. The downhill runs are great, but they don't always work. And if you stack the box well enough, they're never going to work. You don't have really anybody fast enough to get around the edge. So that's where you would use Justin Fields to say, okay, here's an option. Najee Harris is either going to take it right up the gut or you're going to try to get the corner. And I think he could get the corner a lot of times, but I do agree. Like, that's a whole other element to this offense that they don't have. It would be good to have, and you could use it in Justin Fields.
Mike just simply wants to know, can this team win a Super Bowl?
I think it could. I think it could. I think the Steelers are up there as Super Bowl contenders. I'd put them below the Chiefs, next to the Bills. That's where I would say they stack up. If the defense plays like they played yesterday and the offense plays like they played against Washington, they could put on a complete game. Why not? And I know that TJ Watt is itching for one. If you get Alex Highsmith back, if you could somehow stay healthy, it changes so much. I would say yes. I'd put them right up there with Kansas City, or below Kansas City with Buffalo in the AFC. I think Detroit's the best team in football, but I mean, the Super Bowl, anything could happen, and it comes down to heart a lot of times. Plus a guy that's been there. Let's not get carried away. Jared Goff's also been there. Jared Goff has also been there. So this one could be, it could be going. I would say yes to this. I think the Steelers are real contenders.
Let's jump over to Cody Silva, who says, we added the sacks and interceptions. Lamar had his worst game of the year, probably. With the disrespect the media gave the Steelers last week, do you think they'll finally call them contenders after this victory?
Yes, they will. And there will be asterisks to some of those contender statements. You'll get guys like Cam Newton, who, for the love of me, I just don't understand. But Russell Wilson could throw for 700 yards and 12 touchdowns in a game, and Cam Newton sitting around going, I don't know, man, still not convinced on Russ. I think he needs the Legion of Boom. Like, what do you have not watched a Russell Wilson take, huh? You're just talking. That's just what you're here to do. It will come with some asterisks, but overall, I think a lot of people, the people that you would listen to, the people that you would say, oh, that's an opinion I appreciate and I respect, the Rich Eisens, the Mike Greenbergs, those types of guys, the Dan Patricks, those will tell you that the Steelers are contenders, and that everybody who gave the Baltimore Ravens they're going to manhandle the Steelers approach going into week 11, well, they were wrong. And I think a lot of people will admit that they were wrong, and that the Pittsburgh Steelers are a real deal football team right now.
Let's go over to Samuel, who says, Noah loved the Justin Fields victory package. Do you believe they'll have a tricky one in the future that's designed for him to pass the ball? That would be epic. Yeah,
I do think that they start to expand on this, and it'll take time. It'll take time. They won't use a Justin Fields pass until they absolutely have to use a Justin Fields pass, a situation where they're just going, like a Philly special situation. That's when they're using a Justin Fields pass. Until then, it's just going to be run. So that defense is, the second that he goes in there, are looking at it going, okay, Justin Fields is the real deal, and we have to approach him like a running back, and you have to be able to stop him. And then, I don't know, the AFC Championship or something crazy, Justin Fields breaks up a 40-yard pass to George Pickens, and hopefully Acrisure Stadium goes absolutely bananas because of it.
Let's go over to Dalton, who says, Noah, what would preseason you say if I traveled back in time and told him that after week 11, Cincinnati would be 4-7, Cleveland would be 2-8, and the Steelers would be 8-2 and in first place in the AFC North?
I'd tell you no. I'd tell you for two reasons. I'd say Cincinnati at 4-7, no chance, pal. Joe Burrow is probably the second best quarterback in the NFL. I don't know what's going on with Cincinnati, man, because Joe Burrow might be the second best quarterback in the NFL, and the Cincinnati Bengals are atrocious. It's crazy to me what's happening there. So I would tell you that's a lie. That's never going to happen. And then Cleveland 2-8. We'd probably have a good laugh on that one. Be like, yeah, probably. Like Sean Watt, Browns are the Browns, pal. The Pittsburgh Steelers at 8-2 and in first place in the AFC North. I'd tell you, you probably are going to lose to Dallas or the Jets. You're probably going to lose to potentially the Falcons, and you probably are going to lose one to the Ravens. So maybe, but chances are the Ravens are in first place. That one actually might be the most believable of the three, but I'd still look at you and say, this is nuts. And how they do it is the real storyline here, because you would have to detail to me exactly how the Pittsburgh Steelers have just completely become a real contender and have beaten these teams and are using every part of their entire roster to do so. That at that moment, I'd say no chance, pal. This is 21-17 games with TJ Watt absolutely dominating people. That's where you'd catch me off guard.
Let's go down to unlimited moon balls on this Victory Monday. And
yes,
he wants a little bit of respect. Says below KC next to the Bills who just beat KC. Just crown us already. We beat the best offense in the league, and it should have been a blowout.
I don't know if it should have been a blowout. You gotta win blowouts to deserve the.
You gotta take advantage whenever you have
you gotta
field goals and the turnover.
Unless it's a blowout, you can't say it should have been a blowout. I still think they're two. I think in the grand scheme of contenders, if that's where you're putting them, I'm not saying the best team in football, because the Pittsburgh Steelers are probably the third best team in the NFL right now in just terms of, if you were to play them, who are you going to pick to win? It would go Detroit, and then it go Buffalo, and then it probably go Pittsburgh. And I think Buffalo and Pittsburgh are a tough 1-2 right there. Like you could pick either one of them above the other. And then it'd be Kansas City. But Kansas City doesn't lose in the playoffs. And that's the difference. Kansas City's done this before. They're looking for a three-peat. And that's why the Steelers are below them in contender status. Not the best team in the NFL. I agree with you. I think that they're right there with Buffalo, if not above Buffalo. But come January,
there's always that caveat of when's the last time Mike Tomlin won.
That's what I'm saying. Game? Like they're two different teams right now at the end of January, and it's been a long time since the Pittsburgh Steelers have played a month after Christmas. So until that happens, you gotta say Kansas City is definitely above them.
Yeah, they deserve respect, but at the same time, so too does the back-to-back Super Bowl champions who have been able to do it week in and week out whenever it comes to January and February. That's the only thing.
I agree. I agree.
Let's go over to Carl Spackler. Appreciate you, as always. Says, think it's possible that Tomlin announces Justin Fields as the starter just to mess with teams and then takes him out after 1 to 2 plays.
That would be awesome. That would be pretty epic, especially if he would have to like let us in on the joke. Not all of Steelers fans, but like you guys know me well enough to know that I'd cue you in without cueing you in. I'd let you know what was going on without verbatim saying what was going on. But Mike Tomlin he'd have to walk into the media room before the press conference and just be like, all right, guys, I'm gonna announce Justin Fields as the starter here. And everybody I'd be like, I'm not serious, dude. I'm just messing with the Browns, pal. I'm just messing with the Browns. And then we'd all have a good laugh and it'd be like, all right, cool. We keep this secret for 3 days. This is awesome. And then he plays one snap. I say throws a moon ball to George Pickens, and then Russell Wilson comes jogging right in after that. That would be best case scenario, I would say, in that situation. That would be awesome. That would be awesome. Before we go to the next one, we do have to take one more break here. We're going to hear a quick word from our boys over at Rocket Money. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. See all of your subscriptions in one place and know exactly where your money is going. And for any that you don't want anymore, Rocket Money can help you cancel them with just a few taps. Rocket Money's dashboard gives you a clear view of your expenses across all accounts, easily creates a personalized budget with custom categories to help keep your spending on track, and sees your monthly spending trends in each category to know exactly where your money is going. Get alerts if your bills increase in price, there's unusual spending activity, or if you're close to going over your budget. And the new goals feature automatically saves money for you without you even having to think about it. Whether your goal is to pay off your credit card debt, put away money for a house, or just build your savings, Rocket Money makes it easy. Rocket Money will even try to negotiate lower bills for you, sometimes up to 20%. They automatically scan your bills to find opportunities to save. Then you can ask them to negotiate for you. They'll deal with customer service. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions. They could save members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's features. Stop wasting money on things you don't use. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions by going to rocketmoney.com/allsteelers. That's rocketmoney.com/allsteelers. 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 I'm going to hear that in my dreams tonight. All right, we're diving back into all your questions. Make sure you toss them in the chat. If you got them, we'll answer all of them before we head out of here. Shout out our boys over at Rocket Money. I use Rocket Money all the time, actually, to be very honest with you. I'm the weirdo that's like, I'm the guy that had 2 Petco accounts for like 6 years. And then the second I realized I was paying $40 a month instead of 20, I've never turned back. Never turned back. So shout out to Rocket Money. All right, what do we got?
Yeah, let's go over to Vic, who says, Noah and Nick, should we be worried that the Steelers can't score a passing touchdown against the league's worst receiving defense?
No, statistically speaking, yes. If you were going to look at it on paper, you'd say, that's concerning, definitely. But if you watch the game, which, I know that you did, I know that everybody else did. So I know that everybody has somewhat of the same point of view. It's, this was not a game that you judge an offense off of. It's a game that you judge a defense off of. It's a game that you look at and say Lamar Jackson had a terrible game and he's still probably going to win MVP, that Derrick Henry had a bad game and he was probably number 2 in the MVP race, maybe number 3 in the MVP race. You just looked at it and said there was nobody outside of George Pickens, shout out, who had, I think, just under 100 yards, 89 yards in this one. Outside of George Pickens, there wasn't really anybody. There wasn't anybody you said and looked at and said, they had a good offensive game. So I don't think you could judge an offensive player in this one. This is just a defensive battle between 2 AFC North teams that when they play, it doesn't matter where they rank at the end of the day. And it was a reminder to us because I think everybody, myself included, had the mindset of these are 2 bad defenses. This isn't going to change. And then you watch the game and you went, oh, never mind. This is Pittsburgh Steelers versus Baltimore Ravens football. It's just a different landscape.
Yeah, and I think it was Marlon that put it in the comment section here. And again, not calling out Marlon, but it's a good point. He said, well, aren't the Bengals and Ravens rivals as well? How did Joe Burrow put up 9 touchdowns in 2 games against them? It's a different rivalry. The fabric of that rivalry is not as hard-nosed, as punch you in the mouth as Ravens Steelers has been. I mean, Ravens Steelers gets up there. I mean, depending on who you ask and where that person is from, up there with Packers versus Bears, up there with, Eagles versus Cowboys. It's one of the biggest rivalries in the league for a reason. It's because it transcends whatever era you're in, and it always goes back to the heart of what that rivalry is, and that's punchy in the nose football. And there was another point made here. I think it was giving you a little bit of credit from Cody Silva, who says almost held Derrick Henry under the 50 yards that you said. And I'll say this, listen, you have to limit that 31-yard run. But outside of that 31-yard run, he had 12 carries for 34 yards. So they did a good job, not as good as you would hoped. And you can't take away the 31-yard run because it happened. But they did a really good job against Derrick Henry. Not to mention, that was his first fumble in 500 some odd carries. Yes. People get, and as I said this earlier, people get out of character when it's Ravens versus Steelers. It doesn't matter what you were before you came into the game.
Exactly. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Let's go over to Unlimited Moonballs, who says, who had the best turnover play between the Steelers' 3 turnovers yesterday?
I agree with you. You got to go Peyton Wilson. I mean, Patrick Queens was awesome. That was just a cool moment. And he was juiced up on the sideline. I don't know how much they showed on TV, but he was juiced up he probably hugged every single person on the Pittsburgh Steelers sideline after that one. But the Peyton Wilson interception, I still don't think is like physically possible. I just don't know how that happened. I've watched that play so many times. At one point after the game, I was just literally sitting there in replay, just watching the interception going, at what point does this go into his arm? I don't understand how a brain works like that. That was something special. Peyton said after the game, he said, I don't think I was down, and I'm pretty sure I got it to Minka before anybody touched me. And if that was the case, it would have been so awesome to see Minka try to take that and potentially take that to the house to add to it. But you got to go Peyton Wilson. That was unbelievable yesterday.
Let's go over to Noah Thomas, who says, when does Broderick Jones being traded or replaced become a real discussion?
Next season. Not until next season. It's unfortunate, but the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I don't want to say that. I don't hope anybody ever gets cut or anything like that. I don't want anybody to ever lose their jobs. But you do have to judge them accordingly. And Broderick Jones is a struggle right now. He is definitely a weak spot in the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. And because of that, you have serious conversations to be had over the offseason. The problem with right now, which I get everybody wants, instant change, is your backup option is Spencer Anderson, who doesn't have much experience at tackle in the NFL, and Calvin Anderson, who had one snap and everybody went, put Dan Moore back in, please put Dan Moore back in. It's not feasible right now. They don't have an option. And because of that, you got to go with Broderick Jones. It's hard to imagine it get worse, but it probably would, and just hope for the best.
Let's jump down to Kevin Cruz. Appreciate you. Says, can the Steelers get first place in the AFC?
Yes, they can. Yes, they can. The Chiefs lost yesterday. They did not look good yesterday, and this is the beginning. I told you guys, I said it, at some point they're going to lose. Nobody goes perfect, and it's all about the snowball effect that comes after it. How far do they drop before they start to rise again? The magic has run out. Let's see what they can do next. And you kind of wanted them to wait a couple more weeks because the downfall is going to be more serious than the more that you win. But that's okay. But I still think that the Pittsburgh Steelers could get first place in the AFC. They're a game behind right now, and they have an opportunity to play the Chiefs to get that game, and they'd have to win their entire division and probably only lose. I mean, the Bills are, I don't know what the Bills' entire schedule looks like, but it's not like an AFC East game is going to challenge them this season. So you'd have to think that they're going to be very close to those 2 losses, maybe 3. Steelers are going to have to win out most of the rest of the way to have a shot at first place in the AFC, but it's not impossible.
Let's go over to Marlon Lewis, who says, was the offense stalled out because Arthur Smith's play calling, or was Russ just wanting the moon ball?
I think it was a little bit of both. I do think it was a little bit of both. I think I'm not criticizing anybody for this game offensively. I think you have to judge accordingly. But just yesterday just felt like a game where you weren't going to get anything done no matter who you were and what you were doing. I think Russ was looking for the moon ball a little bit too often and wasn't there. And shout out to the Baltimore's defense for shutting that down. And 2, I think Arthur Smith did not adjust for most of the game to say, okay, well, you want to know what would probably work is shorter, quicker routes to let guys get, a 3 or 4 yard down instead of trying to shoot for 25. Just work your way down the field. And things started to work whenever they did do that. Most of the time it was running the football. But I think it's got to be a little bit of both. I think Russ was holding on to the ball, and I think Arthur Smith failed to recognize that the underneath was open, and you have guys with speed that might be able to make something happen there.
We got somebody, Christian, looking ahead, very far ahead, says, I know it's early, but what did the Steelers take in the first round of the draft next year?
Yeah, probably a defensive lineman. I would guess a defensive lineman. I don't think anything's changed there yet. You are probably going to lose Larry Ogunjobi in the offseason. Cam Hayward's 35 years old. Keanu Benton is going to be on the 3rd year of his rookie deal, and I get it. Like you're not looking that far ahead with Keanu Benton, and you're hoping that he sticks around. But I would go defensive tackle would be my guess there, just to shore up the interior for the defense.
Let's go over to Brandon, who says, can we talk about Deontay Johnson's post-game interview? It just shows that he wishes he was a Steeler still, and I bet next year, even this year, he is if he's cut.
Yeah. Brandon, I hate to disagree with you, but I got to disagree with you. I don't think Deontay Johnson's ever coming back to the Pittsburgh Steelers. It was more character concerns than it was play for why the Pittsburgh Steelers got rid of him in the first place. And that essentially just means that, it was time to go. Now, I think Deontay Johnson is a good person, and I very much so enjoyed my time covering him. I enjoyed seeing him yesterday. It was good to see him. But I don't think he's coming back to Pittsburgh. I don't think that's an option. The Steelers will look in other directions for a wide receiver. Maybe if Deontay is like super cheap at some point, you consider it, but I don't see it happening. I just don't see it happening next year.
Let's go over to Eddie the Great, who says, "Good morning, fellas. Is it arrogant of me to no longer consider this a rivalry? 8 of 9 wins doesn't add up to that title."
I think it's a rivalry that the Pittsburgh Steelers are winning. I think that's what it is. And I get it, 8 of 9 wins. Lamar's got to answer, but it's how close these games are. It's how hard nosed these games are. It's what this means, and it's good that the Pittsburgh Steelers are winning and they have control of this rivalry. That's awesome. But it's everything that's on the line every time these two meet. I think that's what makes it a rivalry more than the record. Is every time these two meet, it's playoff implications. It's AFC North title implications. It's can somebody ruin somebody else's day. That's what this is. And I think the Steelers winning is awesome. It's good to be on the right side of the rivalry, but it's definitely a rivalry for what it means every time they meet.
Let's go over to Carl Spackler, who says, "Thoughts on letting Darnell Washington take the snap and do a sneak like the tush push, or we put Fields in and let Washington push him. Our tush push can be called moving mountains."
That's awesome. I think it goes back to the Darnell trying to run over people. Is he going to be able to get that low? And I think there's a possibility like he gets Justin Fields right by the tush, and he might pick him up. Like, at some point that momentum's got to go somewhere. Darnell staying that low is difficult. I would love it. I think better. I think you should put, maybe if James Daniels was healthy, you'd put Mason McCormick back there. He looks like a dude who'd run right through that. He'd grab Justin Fields up and just run through that offensive line. Yeah, no questions asked. That would be awesome. I think you should do a Justin Fields in the tush push sneak situation. I don't know who you're putting there, but you got options. I mean, I'd put any of the big guys on the other side of the football out there and say, screw it, just push them. Just give them a push.
Let's go over to Diana, who says, "Hey, Noah and Nick, why are we not throwing to Pat Freiermuth? It's driving me crazy. I'm noticing that Russell doesn't really throw over the middle much. Is that why Pat isn't getting targets, or is it Arthur Smith?"
I have yet to figure that out, to be honest. I'm having trouble figuring it out because a lot of times you want to put it on Russ and say, Russ, you're not using the middle of the field at all. And I get it. That's not the quarterback that you've ever been, but maybe you need to be that quarterback. But Pat is not in the middle of the field all the time. Like, there are a good chunk of plays where he is not in the middle. He's on the outside. And I mean, great. But is that where he specializes in? It feels like a lot of the same from last year. I feel like if you used Pat up the seam a lot more, he'd find a lot more targets. I think it's a mixture of both. I don't know if Russ has the ability or the confidence to throw over the field as much as most quarterbacks do. And I also think Arthur Smith just avoids the middle of the field with Russ, which is probably a Russ thing. Like, it's probably a Russ is more comfortable on the outside. Let's get our playmakers to the outside. But I don't think that at a 35-year-old quarterback who's a future Hall of Famer potentially, you make the adjustments. And I think Russ could make the adjustments if you told him to.
Let's go over to William Conroy, who says, "Are we afraid of the potential trap game this Thursday, or do we get it done easy?"
No, definitely a trap game. Definitely concerns of a trap game. I mean, I'm not sitting here willing to say that they're going to lose. I don't think I'll predict that they're going to lose come Thursday, but I would not say this is an easy win. I wouldn't say it's anywhere close to an easy win. The Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cleveland Browns are always tough. They're always a hard-fought, hard-nosed battle, and you would imagine that's going to be the case this time. I mean, if Dorian Thompson-Robinson can win a game over the Pittsburgh Steelers, so can Jameis Winston at the end of the day. So I would say it's I wouldn't say it's a trap game, but it has the potential to be a trap game, certainly, for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I will say it helps them, in my opinion, that they're on the road. Helps you focus in a little bit more than just getting that home cooking, showing up to Acrisure Stadium on a Thursday. I think it helps that they're going to be on the road and they're going to be forced to be focused solely on that. But I agree. It's still, to me, there's concerns of a trap game. We're in November. The Browns have 2 wins. We saw that last year with Arizona and New England. So you have to always, keep your eyes and ears to the ground, especially in an AFC North matchup. Let's go over to Oswald, who says, would you believe me if I told you that George Pickens is 3rd in the NFL in receiving yards right now?
I would believe you, because yesterday the only good offensive player on both sides of the field was George Pickens, and he was a guy that you could still rely on every single time, and that's who George Pickens is becoming. He is quickly becoming a stud. All he needs is a quarterback. Doesn't even need a quarterback that plays well every week. He just needs a quarterback who's going to throw him the football. That's Russell Wilson. George Pickens is an absolute monster. I mean, we said it the other day, top 10. I mean, potentially top 5. I think he's definitely close to top 5.
Yeah, he was 9th in the NFL going into this week. He's 3rd, 1 yard ahead of Zay Flowers now.
Who did nothing yesterday, who finished yesterday's game with 2 receptions for 31 yards and a touchdown, which you could say was more Deontay Johnson than it was Zay Flowers.
Let's go over to Black and Yellow Texas Steel, who says, what is the Steelers' record at the end of this season?
I don't know if it changes much for me. I don't. I think the next Ravens matchup is still a toss-up. It's got to be. I believe that there's potential for a trap game with Cincinnati or Cleveland. And I think Philly and Cincinnati, or Kansas City, are still both really troublesome. So, and I think they'd be troublesome for everybody, but I think at the same time, both teams are talking about how the Pittsburgh Steelers are troublesome now, and you have to worry about them as well. So I just think both of those are a toss-up. I would say right now my record is like still somewhere around 12 games, maybe goes up from 10 to 12, but I would say somewhere around 12 games, potential of 13, 14, depending on if you avoid some trap games, and maybe higher if you beat Kansas City or Philly.
Yeah, I'm looking right now at this schedule. I'm saying 4-3 is doable, which would put them at 12-5. I'm going to try to keep it as simple as that, because obviously variables can weigh in and make things very, very big brain. So I'll just stick it at 12-5.
Yeah, not gonna get carried away anytime soon. Not yet. You beat Cleveland, you beat Cincinnati. Record change becomes a real thing.
Yeah. Let's go over to Unlimited Moonballs, who says, the image of Darnell Washington holding Russ over the goal line like a newborn baby had me dying. Had to apologize to my coworkers, LOL.
I agree. There were some classic images yesterday. Darnell with Russ. There's an image of Justin Tucker missing a field goal and just like looking absolutely defeated, with Patrick Queen just strolling on by him. And that was artwork. That's chef kiss right there on that photographer. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. It was just a good energy. You know what I mean? It wasn't an 18-16 victory where you walked away going, oh man, dude, that was brutal. It was an 18 victory where you went, hell yeah, dude, we did that. That was awesome. It adds a little bit more magic.
Let's go over to Matt Hatch. And there were a couple people that asked, any news on Keanu Benton? We know it's obviously very soon.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's good to go. He went back into the game later yesterday. I know that Mike Tomlin, kind of touched on it a little bit. I will know more tomorrow. Today, Mike Tomlin will talk at noon. I'm sure he'll have some update, but I would imagine that on a short week, he just says, we'll see what happens tomorrow and Wednesday. I would say tomorrow is when we know if Keanu Benton's going to be good for Thursday.
Let's go over to Steeler Lee, who says, is there something to be said about a team literally having a player's number? We always struggled with the Patriots, and now we are Lamar's kryptonite.
Yeah, I do. I do think that there is a thing to it. And I don't think it's explainable. I think every year everybody tries to ask, why do you have Lamar's number? And TJ Watt will say something about, I don't know. And Cam Hayward will say something about schematics. And somebody else will say something about this and that. I don't think it's explainable. I think it comes down to simply when you step in a stadium, you feel that you can't beat this player. And while every other team is probably nervous to play that player, the Pittsburgh Steelers look at it and go, This is just Lamar Jackson. This is the Baltimore. That's probably it. The nameless gray faces come into like full effect against Baltimore. Whereas, and I don't think that's the case in other games and other teams playing Baltimore. They worry about Lamar. The Pittsburgh Steelers look at it and simply go, we just got to beat the Ravens. And I think that goes a long way in this, but it's unexplainable. The answer is yes, though. Teams could definitely have a player's number.
Let's finish it off with this one from Lifted Ones. Did you guys cash out for the Steelers win total since we hit 8 wins yesterday?
Oh, yes, we did. Shout out Lifted Ones for the reminder, my friend. Today is a good day. Today is a good day. Was it 7.5 or was it 8.5?
I thought it was 8.5, but I'm sure some people could have found 7.5 at other places.
I will know for sure because I use my phone as a camera here, so I can't be knowing for sure here. But I will know for sure by, I would say, the next 25 minutes. I would know for sure. That is a fantastic reminder and even just another great way to smile or a reason to smile on a Victory Monday here. Thank you very much. So, Lifted Ones. And shout out to everybody who hit the over. Shout out to everybody who hit the over.
That's a wrap for today then.
Awesome. With that said, guys, we are heading out of here. Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcasts. And as always, find all of our work at si.com/NFL/Steelers. It's a beautiful one in the Berg today, so enjoy it. We'll see you tomorrow. Peace.